This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that allows you to build a beautiful, easy-to-use website to reach your customers, sell your products, create content, and so much more. Thanks to Squarespace for supporting this channel.
The man who shot and killed a professional baseball player is now out of prison.
He deserved a lot more. He deserved to have his life taken away like he took my husband.
So how did Evans, a career criminal with a second-degree murder conviction, get out of prison so early? Felicia Schakowsky says everyone needs to be outraged.
In September of 2020, Felicia Schakowsky got a call she had been dreading for nearly 25 years. The state of Florida was releasing Neil Douglas Evans from police custody. A quarter century earlier, Evans had gunned down her husband, 30-year-old minor league pitcher Dave Schakowsky. Felicia Schakowsky was back at home in Illinois, caring for the couple's one-year-old daughter when she got the call that her husband had been murdered in cold blood. 25 years later, Felicia had been failed by the justice system, and not for the first time. In fact, had it not been for one of Schakowsky's teammates, Neil Douglas Evans may have never faced justice at all. The 1994 MLB season came to a screeching halt after just 4 months of regular season play. A players' strike ended the season prematurely, and in early 1995, there was still no indication the players or the league would budge. 30-year-old Dave Schakowsky thought his playing days were done. In 1985, he left community college and joined the Braves organization as a right-handed pitcher. For 2 years, he bounced around the farm system in Pulaski and Idaho Falls before moving on to the A's. Schakowsky cycled through cities like Huntsville, Alabama, and Modesto, California as he tried to climb the ladder. He made it as high as AAA level in Tacoma, Washington. It was there that his career appeared to be coming to an end. In 11 games, he surrendered an ERA of 9.70, walking nearly 6 batters per 9 innings. The wiry 6'3" righty had apparently reached the limits of his potential. Dave Schakowsky had known Felicia since high school. After college, they had begun dating, and once Dave had let go of his baseball dreams in 1994, the couple settled down in Illinois. They got married, and in the summer, they had their first child, Alexis. Due to the strike, Major League Baseball began looking for replacement players, and Dave got a call from a familiar voice. It was the same scout that had recruited him to the Braves out of college. Nearly a full decade later, he was invited to spring training in Florida, one last shot to fulfill his lifelong dream of playing in the bigs. Before he got the call, Schakowsky had been giving baseball lessons to kids, and his license plate still read forkball. But despite his love of the game, he was ready to take an office job and move forward with his life and support his young family. He knew there was a minuscule chance he would make an opening day roster, even as a replacement player. But Schakowsky decided he would go and play, and if things went well, he could parlay this opportunity into a job as a coach for the Braves. It wasn't even a decision, Felicia Schakowsky later remembered. No one ever promises you a chance to fulfill a dream in life. He knew once the strike was over, he wasn't going to stay. Terry Blocker was a first-round pick by the Mets in 1981. Like Schakowsky, Blocker was hanging on to his baseball career by a thread. But unlike Dave, Blocker had actually reached the majors. For the better part of 5 years, he had shuttled up and down from the minors to the bigs, playing as a center fielder for New York and later, Atlanta. Blocker had shown promise in his career, but never hit his stride at the plate, batting .205 in his 244 career at-bats. When he got the same call as Schakowsky, he was a little more reluctant to give baseball one last go, but nonetheless, he accepted the invite. In the Braves camp, he never became close with Dave Schakowsky. The two stayed in different hotels. Their only interactions were from 60 feet away. On March 24th, the two faced each other in a team scrimmage. After a 3-pitch battle, Blocker grounded a single in between Schakowsky's legs. Just hours later, Schakowsky would be found dead. Felicia was in Illinois when she was informed of her husband's death. In the days following the tragedy, she received over 700 letters from her own friends, teammates of her husband, even employees of the team. She had been left alone to care for her baby daughter. Braves pitchers John Smoltz and Tom Glavine set up a trust fund for Alexis. But despite the kindness of everyone in the organization, nothing could take away the sting of becoming a widow. and nothing could bring closure without finding justice. Terry found out just like everyone else, but he reacted differently to the tragedy. It didn't sit well with him that his teammate's killer was on the loose, likely to escape punishment for a senseless crime. Despite never having met them, Blocker could feel the pain of Dave Shutkowski's young widow and his baby girl that would have to go through life without her father. A couple of the guys called me and told me what happened, Blocker told the New York Times. It brought tears to my eyes. I sat there for a while, feeling maybe I hadn't witnessed as well as I should have. Then I started shivering. I got down on my knees. It wasn't like I wanted revenge for Dave Shutkowski. I was asking God what I could do. Then Blocker decided to do something. He called an old friend who had grown up in the area and set out to find the killer. Very quickly, it became clear that this dangerous journey might cost him his life as well. He set out onto the rough streets of Pleasant City, near where the crime had happened. He didn't have a plan, and his lack of direction quickly found him with a gun in his face. The residents didn't take kindly to him asking questions, but somehow it didn't faze him. Blocker felt as though he was serving a higher purpose, and the threat of death wasn't about to slow him down. He later told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, "I was at peace then. Why? I can't explain," he said. "All of a sudden it was like my spirit left my body. I'm looking at this from above. I had never experienced anything like that." Despite his hubris, the search yielded very few leads on that first day. But 24 hours later, Blocker returned to the street where his life had been threatened. His persistence would pay off. Blocker was sitting on the hood of his car outside of a laundromat when he was approached by one of the men he had seen the day before. This time, the man was not wielding a gun. Instead, he had information. This wasn't the man that killed Shutkowski, but he knew who did. The man gave Blocker a name: Neil Douglas Evans. Evans had already served multiple terms in prison, and with this information, he might spend the rest of his life there. Blocker turned to the police, gave them Evans' name, and 2 days later, he was arrested and charged with the murder. All because Terry Blocker had stuck his neck out for a teammate he had hardly known. The Braves and West Palm police were offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest, but Blocker refused the payment, instead requesting it be given to Felicia, and for all his troubles, Blocker was cut by the team. He had a bad knee and the release officially ended his playing days. But to him, it didn't matter. He knew baseball wasn't the reason he had gone all the way down to Florida. He had served his higher purpose, and he was at peace. It had gone down like this. On the evening of March 24th, Dave Shutkowski was walking back to the team hotel after dinner. Evans was riding a yellow bicycle. He pulled up to Shutkowski and aimed a gun directly at the pitcher. After a short exchange in which Evans tried to rob Shutkowski for drug money, he fired 3 shots that hit Dave. Shutkowski didn't go down right away. He ran for 100 yards before he eventually collapsed on the sidewalk and passed from his wounds. 2 years later, in 1997, Neil Evans was sentenced to 25 to life. He narrowly avoided the death penalty. Felicia Shutkowski was in the courtroom when Evans was convicted. She hoped he would never again see the light of day. But 17 years later, Evans was free. Dave Shutkowski's killer had accepted a plea deal that reduced his sentence, and by 2012, he was back on the streets. It didn't take long for Evans to find himself behind bars once again. Evans was released from prison in 2020. Even worse, Felicia's husband's murder is a taboo subject for the Atlanta Braves because he was a replacement player, seen by the striking players as a scab. In the 1995 playoffs, Felicia was invited by Chipper Jones to attend a playoff game. The Braves made her pay her way into the game. The only kindness from the team she received was from Smoltz and Glavin, who quietly raised funds for her despite her husband crossing the picket line. And Terry Blocker, despite being a former big leaguer with the Braves, has not been invited to any old-timers events by the organization. He now lives in Stone Mountain, Georgia, where he works for a cable company. The murder of Dave Shutkowski is a tragedy in more ways than one. a senseless death, a broken justice system, and a heartless response. But it's also a tale of heroism that has been largely forgotten. It's a story that needed to be told.
Now more than ever, you need to set yourself apart from your competition. You know you need a professional website, but most important of all, it cannot break the bank. That's where Squarespace comes in. The easiest and most practical way for you and me to build a website. I love how it gives me the options that I thought were hard to set up. Things like an online store, membership areas, and seamless integration of my social media accounts. It's all in one place and it's easy to manage. You owe it to yourself to be financially responsible while also looking to grow your business or online presence in challenging times. Squarespace is the right solution for all of those things. So after this video, head on over to squarespace.com/5pointsvids to get a free trial and 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Again, that's squarespace.com/5pointsvids from the link below and get 10% off your first website or domain purchase. Squarespace.com.